pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Deputy Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Okay, Councilman Troy?
Present.
Councilman Dickey?
Here.
Councilman Valentine?
Here.
Councilman Tatari?
Here.
And Supervisor Day.
Here. Just for those of you who are present and watching on TV, we're in the new courtroom, or newish courtroom, because the AC in the other half of the building broke, which we'll be addressing via vote later on. But we don't want to make everyone suffer for the fact that it's 60 years old and never was repaired. Moving on, we have a few announcements, and then we'll have a presentation for a zoning change application, and then there's a discussion regarding FEMA, and then we'll move on to our workshop agendas and voting items at the beginning with hearings and going from there. So if I can see, we have the Highway Department 2018 surface treatment program begins on July 16th. It starts in the Pearl River area and continues throughout Orangetown until all completed. The list was available on the back of the R-Town. It's also available on the website and our social media. If you could remember as a public to drive slowly and cautiously, you'll have the pebbles kind of popping up, so you want to take it easy when they're first done and obey the traffic control personnel. We'll have guys out on the road and they want to get home to their families, so please be careful around them. We also have a Town of Orangetown Summer Concert Series this Saturday, July 21st. It's been moved from Veterans Memorial Park to Central Avenue Field in Pearl River at 7:30 p.m. Tommy Dunn and Jan Lynch will be there as our performers. So it's new venue, downtown Pearl River. You can go out and get dinner beforehand, or you can go out and get a drink afterward, or do both, and spend some money at our downtown businesses over there. Also announced, we have a public hearing, the Town Board Workshop of August 7th for commercial building internal subdivisions. We have other public hearings coming up as well. On the 24th of July, we have the proposed local law regarding the performance standards for our particular matter. We also have the proposed local law, which will be set today. Assuming it's passed, we will have that for basically traffic enforcement surrounding parades. That was brought up by our town attorney. And then we have the public hearing regarding the point at Lake Tapan Phase 2 for a PAC district. That's what's coming up on the 24th. And finally, for announcements, we received word from our longtime town clerk, Charlotte Madigan, that she is retiring effective today. With regret, she's not able to be here due to some of the same family health issues that have kind of led her to make this decision. So we want, as a board, just want to express our appreciation for her nearly 23 years of service. I've prepared a proclamation for her, which we'll get to her through her deputy, Joe, up there, who will remain with us until we complete the search for a full-time town clerk. And he's been doing a great job over there on the left-hand side since he came on in January. Again, a proclamation honoring Charlotte Madigan for her nearly 23 years of service to our town as town clerk, and wishing her well wishes in her retirement with her husband, children, grandchildren, and loved ones going forward. Signed by me on behalf of the town board. So congratulations on your retirement, Charlotte, and if you're watching, and we look forward to working with the predecessor or the successor when they arrive. So Joe, could you take this and make sure Charlotte gets that? Okay, if we could hit the presentation. So we have H&A Palisades Premier Conference Center in to give a brief presentation regarding their application for a zone change that they submitted to the town board. We'll hear that and then make decision as to a public hearing on it. So Brian, if you want.
Good evening.
There's some I can hear murmurs of confusion. Brian just happens to be the attorney for both Galway Bay and H&A Palisades. H&A Palisades is making a presentation today. It's not the public hearing. That's later on for Galway Bay, which is Pearl River. H&A Palisades and Galway Bay and Pearl River. Go ahead, Brian. Sorry.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor, members of the town board. My name is Brian Quinn. I'm an attorney. My office is at 67 North Main Street, New City, New York. I'm appearing as attorney for the applicant H&A Palisades Center. If I might make a brief comment, this is a great room. Why don't you should have all your town board meetings here. Okay.
I can't see Rob from here, and he's like 9 feet tall. So.
Rob has his space, clerk, everybody has room here, it's great. Okay. In any event, this is an application. We've submitted a petition on behalf of HNA Conference Center. You may recall that this is the IBM Conference Center. It's been known that way for many years. HNA acquired it, I guess, about 2.5 years ago. I also should introduce Jesse Coakley of Mazer Engineering. He's doing the engineering for us. A little while ago, the HNA Center applied to the Planning Board for an expansion, and we have received the approvals to construct an additional 100 rooms over there, and that is actually in the final stages of getting the site plan signed off now by all the various interested and involved agencies. So, this is currently operating under a special permit, and it is a limited special permit to the extent that it's a conference center, and the use of the hotel is limited to those who are attending conferences at the conference center. They would like to open it up for overnight transient guests so that it is a full hotel usage. As part of the expansion that was approved, Jesse Coakley and Mazer Engineering did a traffic study, so it already contemplated what additional traffic could be generated by an extra 100 rooms over there. I'm hopeful that all of you have visited the site at one time or another. I know I've attended many luncheons there for the RBA or other organizations, and it's a beautiful facility. They'd like to keep it a viable facility. It's a very large site. It consists of 100 acres, 106 acres. They have plenty of parking over there. As a matter of fact, the parking was reviewed as part of the proposal for the expansion of the hotel. When we first started to consider this, we met with different representatives of the town because we contemplated originally doing or applying for an amendment to the special permit to allow for a full hotel use. And in consulting with different people at the town, the proposal was suggested that why don't you just apply to have this rezoned into the office park. The office park zoning is very similar to the current zoning, the only difference being that it allows for a full hotel. And, special permits can be subject to quirky things, and I know that at least the people we spoke with at the town, I believe, preferred that we do this as a zone change into the office park. So that's the proposal that's contained in the petition. I don't know whether you had any questions or comments about that, but we are only on tonight for the purposes of scheduling a public hearing where we would make a full presentation of all of the facts and circumstances. Jesse will be there. We will listen to see whether you want some additional traffic study done or what other potential issues there could be. I know you have a very busy calendar tonight, so I don't know whether you wanted to hear anything more, but Mr. Troy, you look like you have a question.
Yeah, no, I've been down there. I was down there when I was with IBM. I was down there for other functions after that. But how many rooms are down there in the existing in the conference
And
center?
approved also, I would say. Existing and then approved for
Yeah,
expansion.
I believe it's 100 rooms now, and an additional 100 rooms have been approved as part of the expansion.
Basically doubling that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's already been approved, though, right?
Okay.
It's done.
Yeah, we have full planning board approval. We went, there was
just-
one
I'm
minor
just trying to
variance,
get
ZBA.
an idea
Sure,
of size, that's
sure.
all.
That approval's just for
As is.
conferences.
Correct.
There's no approval to use it as a hotel.
A full hotel. No, that's the purpose of this application.
Can you take me through, so, as I understand it, it was basically being rented out as a hotel already by the previous owner?
Yes, thank you.
Without permission, and then it was caught in this process of the planning.
Thank you for reminding me of
Yeah.
that, yes. Apparently, the outfit that was running the center before HNA purchased it, and I believe it was under the Dolce group, they had been apparently taking overnight transient guests in there, and apparently had been advertising on the internet for the sale of rooms on an overnight basis. When HNA acquired the property, they presumed, because of the special permit, and it's not exactly easy to find special permits, which are usually filed in the town clerk's office rather than the building department. They apparently had never gotten approval for a hotel use, but it had been operating that way apparently for years. When we applied to the planning board for the expansion, we were contacted and advised that there were advertisements online for the sale of hotel rooms overnight, transient. When we heard that, we advised the client that this is not allowed under the use of the special permit, and that ceased. I've checked a couple of times since then, hotels.com, things of that nature, and I did not see any rooms available at the HNA Center. So I believe, I asked the client this evening before we came in, and they said, no, absolutely not. We've stopped the advertising for rooms.
You can do conferences, weddings and bar mitzvahs,
Yes.
catered events.
Yes.
And they can stay overnight right now, but they can't just be a Joe that wants to get a room for the night is kind of the big difference.
That's correct. The special permit was amended at one point to allow for catered affairs by outside,
Right.
to run different weddings, bar mitzvahs, communions, whatever. So,
And how much is the property taxes that they pay right now? It's somewhere over $1 million, right?
as I recall, it's in excess of $1 million, yes, on an annual
There is
basis.
buildings right next to there on 9W. Are they in that office zone that you're thinking of making this to? Or do you
I'm not sure. Do you have the zoning map? I know which buildings you're speaking about. It's very close to the Rock and Country Club as well,
Right.
too. Yeah, there's a couple of offices I know right on 9W there as well, too. They must be in an office zone, or I presume the town wouldn't have
Okay.
issued COs for those buildings.
The only difference in the zones, if you look at the code, it's literally office park, hotels, all else is the same as LO, like you refers you to the LO. So they may just be LO and they're allowed to, there's not a hotel. I mean, it's literally the only use not permitted in an LO versus an OP. There's no difference. And that's why actually the Pearl River Hilton is an OP zone, because as is Blue Hill. That's an
Difference
OP
is
zone
that
over there.
In the OP zone, you can do a hotel.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
And
That
LO,
is the single difference, though. That's
Right.
why they went with
It's
the
a
zone
big
change instead of a special permit, because there's only one difference between the two
Right.
zones.
After discussion, it seemed like the much better way to go on this thing, rather than a special permit.
Rob, do you have something to add? Yeah, sorry, I didn't see you.
One, this is the only property that's seeking the change. So
Okay.
it's not going to affect any other properties. I don't know if that was your question.
That was the question, yeah.
That's number one. Number two, you couldn't have changed the special permit because it's not a permitted use there. So really the only way to do it was
Okay.
with the zone change.
Gotcha. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? We good? All right, so we'll consider the vote on setting a public hearing on it, and then hear the full case and let the public come in theoretically at that
Yes.
point. So, but we'll make that decision tonight.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Real quick, so moving on from the presentations, is just a quick touch on here. We have this FEMA hazard mitigation plan update. I would have it in as a workshopped resolution, but we just got it like a few days ago, and there was no, but I think it's something that's been passed on an annual or somewhat annual basis.
we've done that before.
So is everyone okay with just throwing a version of that previous year's resolution in for the next meeting to vote on? I think we need to vote by the end of the month.
I guess my understanding is that we're just adopting what FEMA has adopted as far as.
Yeah, so
the
we can
flood
get,
zones are.
Right.
yeah, exactly. I just want to make sure it was
The
okay
maps.
with it.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have, it wasn't able to be workshopped as a resolution. We'll write it up as a full resolution for the 24th. Okay, great. So at the beginning, we have, just to get this closer to when we announced it, we have a resolution to acknowledge with regret the resignation and retirement of Charlotte Matter Town Clerk. I will move that resolution. Is there a second? Councilman Batari, all in favor? There's a few voting resolutions at the beginning. That one we are, she's voting. Today is resigning. But we have like public hearings we have to vote on and stuff. Okay, I'm sorry, that Councilman Divany was asking, there is a point, because of the gaps between meetings, where we have a few votes at the end of these public hearings, and then we go back to just workshopping for the next meeting. The next point is we're going to open the public hearing regarding storage containers called pods for colloquial use in the town of Orangetown. Is there a motion to open the public hearing? Councilman Matari, sorry, second. Councilman Troy, all in favor? Okay, is there anyone here to comment on the storage container law as proposed for public hearing today? We don't have anyone who's signed in. Okay, seeing none, I move that we can't vote. I was just advised by our town attorney, we can't vote due to circulation issues, so we have to continue this. Though there's no comments, we'll have to continue it until August 14th, Rob?
Yes.
Okay, so I move that we continue the public hearing on storage containers and town code into the August 14th meeting at, August 14th at 8:05 PM. Is there a second?
Second.
Councilman Divney, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, great. All right, so then we have a resolution for secret. We're not going to be voting on these things on 4, and we're not going to be voting, I assume, at 5 is what I think 5 is. We're not voting on 5 yet because of that circulation issue to the agencies that need to comment. So that'll be taken care of, and then we'll be able to take care of it in August. Bless you. All right, we have another public hearing regarding commercial filming in the town of Orangetown. Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
I'll make a motion.
Councilman Valentine, a second. Councilman Troy, all in favor?
Aye.
Hey, is there anyone here to comment on the proposed changes to our film code in the town of Orangetown? Okay. Seeing no comments, we have a motion to close from Councilman Troy. A second. Councilman Valentine, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's closed. And then we have designation with respect to secret for number 8. Is there a motion for that? Councilman Troy for the motion, second from Councilman Valentine, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, resolution to adopt local law.
Well, can we get someone, Rob, can you tell us what we're voting on?
Yeah, pretty summarized for the public again, even though the comments are over. This is,
Primarily, if you recall, a while back, the
it's this document.
permitting for the building was out of the town clerk's office. That was moved not too long ago to the police department. It's been working well, but it seems that it made more sense to put it over in the supervisor's office for a number of reasons, not the least of which is the cost of the personnel in the police department to administer this, I think, was cost prohibitive, but that was one of the reasoning. The other was to address a couple of issues. One with regard to if a film company wishes to use town-owned property, which has become an issue, not just the park, but we have a lot of buildings. I know that they filmed up at Nike on the mountain there, and so it establishes that there would be an additional cost for the use of the town property.
License fee is what you called it, right?
Correct.
Instead of like a lease, but not a lease.
And there's provisions for compensating neighbors for, if somebody came to my house and wanted to use whatever, I know they wanted to use my neighbor's driveway one time, and they don't come in quietly. There's often, a lot of trucks and noise and lights, et cetera, so there could be issues with respect to compensation. But again, I think that the same goes for businesses. So that's, in general, what it's about. There are many changes, but most have to do with taking it from the police department and making it come out of the supervisor's office, as well as addressing issues for license when using public property and even when using private property, which is also...
Yeah, that was the other thing. A couple, the previous law, though the town incurs costs and effort when someone films entirely on private property, if they park off the town roads, there was no permitting process to offset that cost. So that's been added in at the recommendation of the PD. And also we updated the handheld devices for more modern stuff, like aerial drones being included for regulation for filming to make sure people aren't trying to get around using that. What was the other thing? Yeah, that was it. Updating to making clear what a handheld device was. It wasn't defined in the last law. Was the main thing beyond what Rob said. Any other questions before we move or commentary? Okay. Is there a motion in favor of this zoning code change? Yeah. Councilman Batari, second. Second from Councilman Troy. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, great. Moving on to our third public hearing. We're cooking here. Let's see. Which one is this? This is Galway Bay. Okay, so do we have a motion to open the public hearing for Galway Bay?
I'll make the motion.
Councilman Batari with the motion, Councilman Valentine with the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Is it? They did. They just stepped out.
They went to get him.
Okay. Is there, I mean, the only, correct me if I'm wrong, we only continued to this date was mainly because of the areas. All right, well, we got a whole crew.
20, I want this for senior housing.
Okay. When we last had them, Rob, this was mainly continued because of circulation issues, right? It wasn't
And secret. correct.
secret. Yeah, it was a secret issue that delayed it. So we definitely don't need the full presentation, maybe
I will
the
be
Cliff
as
Notes
brief-
version, and then we'll get to our commentary on the thoughts and any public comment. And parking, we'll get to, yeah, that was the other thing.
I will be as brief or as long as you'd like me to be. We still have
Use your judgment.
the whole
Just remember,
crew
if you
here.
do the wrong one, we're not going to vote for it.
I think we covered just about everything.
You did, mostly.
You know, we have Jay Greenwell here, who's our surveyor. We have Bob Hone, who's our architect. Tommy Acton, who's the principal. We have Kevin Joyce from Joyce Realty, you know, to speak about the demand for the apartments. Basically, things, I think, remain the same. We did explore the purchase of parking permits. It's covered by Chapter 24 of your town code. If I read it correctly, there's 3 parking areas that are mentioned in that, and I believe parking area number 3 is the one that's right next door to our building, if I got my geography correct. And so that's a possibility. I did see the draft resolutions. I thought Mr. Magrino did a very thorough job with respect to that. It presumes that the town board agrees that 1 parking space per unit. You may recall that there are 16 units that are proposed here, so that 16 parking spaces on site would be reserved for residents. That would leave us seeking the necessity for a variance from the ZBA with respect to the commercial usage and the required number of parking spaces by the town code with respect to the downstairs, the first floor area. We believe that, you may recall, Jay, how many parking spaces do we have on site?
We have 38.
38 in total?
Yep.
Okay. So there is parking. I believe you did hear testimony from Mr. Joyce with respect to the usage by people who are coming into his office, which occupies a good portion of the first floor, and the other retail spaces there. So we believe that there is adequate parking there already on site, and if necessary, if some of the residents would like to have a second parking space, the permits can be purchased from the town at the adjacent municipal lot. Other than that, the plans are as submitted. The site plan remains the same, Jay. There's been no changes to that. We have been looking at the second and the third floor space because there appeared to be some space that was underutilized. We may be altering the count between 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom units. There will be nothing more than 2-bedroom units. I think that depending on how you feel about it, that may be something that may be best covered by the planning board with respect to how many 1-bedrooms are going to be there, how many 2-bedrooms are going to be there. I'm not changing the footprint or anything like that. It was really more, Bob, you looked at it and said we could pick up some additional space, that you don't need this.
Still 16 units.
16 units in total. That has not changed at all.
What ratio changed? You had a ratio of singles to one bedrooms.
We had 8 and 8, we had 8 2-bedrooms, 8 1-bedrooms. The way it shakes out, we can alter that. I have a scheme of 10 2-bedrooms and 6 1-bedrooms, and there's still a little space left over where we could have some common areas. But,
Common areas like between all the apartments to share, you mean? Like
yeah,
a,
something
like a,
that they could share,
like a rec room or like.
maybe a country kitchen that somebody could meet their family in. They didn't want to meet in the unit.
It just seems that the initial discussions that we're hearing are there's more of a demand for 2-bedrooms than 1-bedrooms, even though this is senior housing. Often elderly people, I'm told, and I'm rapidly getting there if I'm not there already, sometimes they want to sleep in different bedrooms. They have different sleep habits. Somebody wants to watch TV. Somebody wants to sleep. And sometimes, if you have seniors, they'd like to have the grandkids come over for an overnight. your code does limit and pretty much defines what over 55 is, and I know one of the things is that is required if this gets approved is the recording of a declaration with respect to who can occupy those units, and we're fully prepared to comply with that existing town requirement.
Any other questions for the applicant? I know we've kind of we've trod the ground before, is what I would say.
And Mr. Joyce is prepared to say that nothing's changed.
Go ahead.
Does the parking requirement change, is it based on square footage, or is it based on number of units? Because it's 16 units, but if they're all 2 bedrooms, do you need more parking spaces?
So there's no requirements for the number of bedrooms, I don't think, right, Rob? It's up to us to set the number of parking spaces per unit that we want.
No matter how big or small the unit is?
I mean, in Nyack, if it's a 1-bedroom, they require a certain amount of spots.
Right.
And then if it's a 2-bedroom.
Right.
It's a factor for us
Would
to
make sense
decide.
to me.
Yeah.
The code says 1.5 spaces per unit. Right, it goes per dwelling unit. It does say it's 1.5 per dwelling unit, but with this type of conversion, this board can modify many of the lot multiple controls.
Yeah.
I'm just noticing now on the agenda, some of the proposed items were cut off, including county planning comments, but I'll get to those. I don't know if you wanted me to get to them yet or not.
Once they're done, I think with that we
Yeah,
can.
but there's 3 items that cannot be changed by the board, and that's the minimum lot area, the base density, or the minimum floor area ratio. Those are all items that have to get variances for. But many of the bulk requirements, I think we addressed this last time, can be set by the board. It is in there, again, it's a little disjointed, but it's in there based on
Rob?
what they presented.
Rob, actually, the resolution appears at the beginning of the agenda, but it also, the full resolution with the overrides for county planning appears in the back. I think it starts at page like 30.
There's a backup one, I think.
Yeah, yeah. That's the complete one.
If you go to the back, they have the full resolution. I think it's somewhere like page 30, like as a backup document. But it's pretty much almost entirely.
I think it starts on page 30 and runs to 38, if I remember correctly.
What's inside the agenda is almost the entirety of it.
Yes, yes. Full resolution with county overrides.
It's a little clearer on the
See if
backup
there's any
document.
public comment, then we'll have our discussion about parking and this.
On the backup documents I have it here.
Okay, that's,
In terms of,
just start numbering these backup documents. About 3/4 of the way in,
it has a 6, but
it's a 6 but not contiguous.
it's not number 6.
There's a lot of backup documents in this particular one here. You got it? Oh, there we go. Okay, Dennis found it.
The ones with an asterisk are set. I'm sorry, are based upon what they put in our proposed modification. Actually, I was talking with Chris today. I put in 1 per unit. It's up to the board whether it wants to make it 1.25, 1.5. But
Right. It's just a placeholder right now for us to edit
that's
before we vote.
that's tonight. You can make a
Yeah.
determination tonight.
We haven't made a decision on that yet, obviously. Okay. Anything else specific that we need the applicant for before we open it up to the floor? And then we can come back to the parking discussion, to public
Back to
comment.
the county planning comments, if you want to go through those now and they can address them before the public.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So the first one was that they indicated that the site appeared to be deficient in many areas, criteria of the tax zone, the density, lot size, and parking. And it was proposed override, but maybe they can, why don't you address that in terms of density?
Gee, I thought you did a great job, Rob. Well, you cite the unique location in downtown Pearl River, its proximity to public transportation. It requires modifications to the lot and the bulk controls. It does allow this town board to make those determinations and adjust them. There are certain things that the board can do, and there are certain things that the board must refer to the ZBA. And actually, we had some lengthy conversations with Mr. Magrino and the building inspector, Jane Slavin, with respect to interpreting what can be, in my mind, a little bit of confusing language in the zoning code itself. But you know, it's up to this board, and the zone does allow this board considerable leeway in determining density, lot size, and parking.
It's right after the one we're looking at.
One of the things that we're going to be referred to the ZBA if this board approves the zone change would be for the minimum lot acre and the base density and then the floor area ratio. But with respect to the other things, it's indicated that this board has the leeway to establish those, and those are contained in our application and in the proposed resolution.
So that's the only one that would require an override. The others, just note that the town board needs to be satisfied or determined if the frontage along a major secondary roadway.
And it has frontage.
There with respect to North William and
North Main Street.
And bordering with, Washington and
Central.
Right there.
Yep.
And then parking requirements, which we've been discussing. Stories permitted, which I believe would be 3. And again, county comment 5 is similar to county comment 1 in terms of the floor area ratio and density, but again, those require variances by the ZBA.
Right.
So that's all I have.
Okay. Thank you. All right, is there anything else before we bring out the public, if there's anyone with comment on this? No? All right, thank you. We'll bring you back up if we have any specific questions moving forward. So we've opened up the public hearing. Is no one who signed in? Is there anyone who would like to offer comment on this particular public hearing?
Can I just turn the picture around?
Oh, yeah, would you get folks mind turning that? We've all seen it enough, I think, that the folks in the audience see it. Okay. So, seeing no comment, where am I? There we go. So we have a motion to close the public hearing regarding this particular subject. Councilman Valentine, second from Councilman Troy, all in favor? All right, so now let's before we do, that's the closing, before we do SECRA and we do the actual vote, which are the next two, let's talk about the parking issue. I'm just going to run everyone through some math. Now, first of all, we just determined that there may be some more. I have a question, actually, before we get to the parking issues. Rob, can we set a maximum max bedroom per unit size? So we can set, you can't have more than a 2-bedroom unit in this?
You can set it tonight.
That's what I'm saying. In this law, we can add that as a requirement, that they can't put a 3-bedroom in. Could be something we say.
They already said that.
They already said it, but if we put it in the thing, it would actually. Okay, I didn't know if we were allowed to do that or not. First rodeo for me. Okay, so running everyone through some math. Now, the statutory requirement or statutory recommendation, which can be overridden, is 1.5 spaces per unit. I personally, given the concerns of parking and given that there's a potential for more 2-bedrooms and 1-bedrooms, think we should go to more than 1.5. I'm going to run you through the math on that, then I'll run you through the math. Basically, previously, with the conversion for the movie house, for those of you who are listening at home, there was a payment to the parking division or the parking fund in Pearl River in exchange per space, in exchange for having not enough spaces on the property as required. That payment at the time was $1,500 per space. With inflation, it comes to about $1,750 something. So round into $1,800 because we can. That at 1.5 spaces per unit, you have 38 spaces available in the lot. You would need 24 spaces for the residential and 44 by statute for the commercial square footage. It's there. Total spaces required is 68, minus the 38 that are available off street, leaves you with 30 unaccounted for spaces. Multiplying that by 1,800, you come to a $54,000 payment, which works out to $3,375 per unit, $3,375 per unit. Conversely, if we did 1 per unit, the total would be $39,600 at $2,475 per unit. Personally, for me, I think we should be doing the 1.5. It's going to have to depend what everyone thinks. We do need 4, obviously, to pass this whole thing.
I got to be honest, I think we're giving them a good zoning change. I think a lot of people appreciate the senior housing down there, but there is a problem with parking. I honestly think we should do 1.5 for 1 bedroom and 2 spaces for a 2 bedroom.
I don't agree.
Any thoughts on that?
No, we had the discussion, whatever the last public hearing we had, and
They're changing the ratio, so that changed.
I get the change in the ratio, but the thing is, I'm very familiar with the downtown parking there. I spent a lot of time on this thing here, and I think there's enough parking. I'll go with what Chris is suggesting.
It's $60,000 for that big of a zone change? We're doubling the ratio?
I'll stick with the 54,000.
Okay, so assuming we're at 1.5, Paul, are you comfortable with it being at 1.5 per unit? And and we could cap the number of 2 bedrooms permitted in there at a certain number, or we can cap the total number of bedrooms per unit.
If they're going to change the ratio from what they originally proposed, you know, I don't think that's an unrealistic thing. What are you talking about?
But
You're talking about $900 per 2 bedroom.
what's the total, what's the new plan for 2 bedroom to 1 bedroom
10
mix?
2 bedrooms, so that's $9,000. I
It
can't
has not
imagine.
been finalized, but if you want to set a number for 1-bedroom units and 2-bedroom.
And then when the planning board works it out, it's tied to site plan approval is when it would
In
happen.
fact, we may go back down to 1-bedroom units, I don't know.
Right.
That was 10 and 6, right?
Which can be done, a number of 2 bedrooms versus 1
What, they're
bedroom.
not going to make enough money?
And it goes through the planning process, and it changes one way or the other.
It comes back.
They have to certify that, and come back to the board, that the plan that's approved tonight has not substantially deviated, that the plan that goes to the planning board is not a substantial deviation from the plan that you approved tonight.
I don't,
You may want to, set a max number of 2 bedrooms. If through the planning process they reduce it or want to increase it, they would have to come back.
rather than a specific ratio, just a max cap on 2 bedrooms in the units, in the whole building.
However you want to do it.
Right, it said they couldn't do up to a certain amount.
If the applicant is fine with changing the ratio for 1 bedrooms to 2 bedrooms for the parking space requirement,
Then,
it's only $900 more, I don't see why we wouldn't do
so you're saying to do
1.5 spaces for.
per 1 bedroom and 2 spaces per 2 bedroom,
And they're paying
if the applicant's okay with it.
$1,800, which is not a lot of money, per space.
Brian, what's the square footage of the 2-bedroom as opposed to the 1-bedroom?
Theoretically.
Square footage of 2-bedroom versus square footage of 1-bedroom?
The 1-bedrooms are about 750, 800, and the 2-bedroom units are around 1,100, 1,000 to 1,100.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
I mean, if the applicant's okay with it, I'm okay with it. Are you okay with it if they're all right with it, Dennis, to make it a different tiered one for 1 and 2 bedrooms, 1.5 to 2 spaces each?
Fine.
All right, we need the 4, so we all need to agree.
Okay.
Okay, so what we would be looking at then is the question, is everyone comfortable with setting, so we've covered the parking at least to a degree. It would require the 1.5 to 2, it would require the 2 there. What about the maximum bedrooms? But do we want to get into the 2-bedroom, maximum number of 2 bedrooms? We just want to cap it and say no more than 2 bedrooms per unit is kind of the other option.
No more than 2
No more than 2 bedrooms.
Yeah, we should put that in and then it's, that's.
But then they can end up with 20, no?
Well, the question is, do we want to get further into the weeds? Right now, we're not saying anything about number of bedrooms. We can say either
No more than
nothing,
10
we can
or
say no,
12?
we can say either say nothing, we can say you can't have more than 2-bedroom units, you can't have any 3-bedroom units, or we can say that, and then also no more than X number of 2-bedroom units in the development period, like no more than 10 2-bedroom units. We don't-
If it changes, won't it come back to us anyway?
That's just saying if it changes, it would come back to us, so.
You want it to be no more than 8 maybe, or, because you're 16, right? What do you have a
They were hoping to go to 10, so we let them.
Total of 16 units, no more than 2 bedrooms. It was just,
That's
we started out as 8 and 8, we might go to 10 and 6.
more than 10, and then.
So let's do no more than 10, which is fair, that's what they're looking for.
Is that, I mean, if that's something you're
And
not
no
practically.
3 bedrooms at all.
No 3 bedrooms, no more than 10
That's what they're
2-bedrooms.
looking for anyway, so.
No 3 bedrooms is fine. Could we just go back to the parking, though? Because
Sure.
it seems as if, the place next door, the town imposed a $1,500 fee per residential unit. There were 14 units. That was 1,500 times.
No, it's $1,500 per space, is what it was. They require the numbers, it was on a per, in the original resolution, it was written as a per space basis, per parking space. Now, if the town allocated only one parking spot per unit, that may be the case, but it was phrased in the resolution at the time as 1,500 per spot.
And
So I remember we dug up the original resolution when I was
in
12.
that particular building, they had no parking spaces.
They had no parking space.
They had
Yeah.
0.
And
But we're
actually,
trying to figure out the
I-
balance here.
I
But in
think
this space, they're going for a
I passed the-
1.15 floor ratio, Dennis. So we can't compare apples with oranges. Compare oranges and oranges,
Or apples with apples.
or apples with apples. I'm
You can also
telling you.
compare an apple to
It's
an
a
apricot. Is
reasonable
the phrase.
request.
Exactly. I'm just saying, every application is sui generis, Dennis.
Can you explain that for us non-lawyers?
Everything's unique.
Unique.
It's a unique application.
In Latin.
Exactly.
Okay, so, all right. I'm throwing concepts out to see how everyone feels. It's not, I'm just throwing ideas out here. We want to set no 3 bedrooms. The maximum size unit you can have is 2, and you want to set a cap at 10 2-bedroom units
Right.
in the development, and we're going to set it at 1.5 spots per 1-bedroom unit. I'm sorry, 1.5 parking spots per 1-bedroom unit, and 2 spots per 2-bedroom unit at $1,800 per spot.
For whatever they're.
For whatever they end up at, whatever they're short versus the requirement parking of the off-street parking, combining the commercial and residential needs. Does this all make sense to everyone? At least we know what we're talking about?
Yes.
If I might, the
Yes,
problem with
Brian.
that is you're increasing the necessity for the variance, the size of the variance, by saying you need
How's that?
X number of parking spaces. Do you want to?
Why?
I would just like to separate the fee allocation from the parking criteria if we can. Because if you separate,
Okay, so you want to say that there's a $60 fee paid to the parking thing and not mention the number of spaces?
I would rather do that regardless of the fee, if we can do it that way, only because.
We'll just do it on a
you've
per
increased
unit
the degree of
basis.
variance.
We can do it on a per unit basis, equivalent, using the math in our head
Correct.
for the spaces,
Okay,
and that
do
way.
that too.
I'm sure
Why don't you
Tom
just give
doesn't
him a
like the
number?
number, but.
I'm coming up with the number right now. It's 1,800 times,
1.5 per unit.
Correct. Then our.
per 1-bedroom
Stay the
unit.
same.
$1,000 for your parking.
Total, 1.5 per unit.
No,
No, no, we're talking
Multiply that by some other
Right.
number higher than.
for the code, for the purpose of the zone.
Chris,
zone
just say you
that
gotta give us
implement.
$60,000.
that's what I'm trying to come
To
at.
meet your
And
parking.
that's it for parking. In terms of the contribution.
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, the
you're gonna
contribution.
Contribute,
$2,700 per 1-bedroom and $3,600 per 2-bedroom.
Why don't we just say a
Just the
straight
math.
number?
Because we don't know how many, I think we're going to have to guess what they're coming in with the 2 bedrooms. The whole idea was to make it,
We can't be more than
Flexible.
10.
we could just make a number, we can figure out what this comes out to.
60 grand divided.
Why don't you just say it's 60, and you can only get 10 two-bedrooms?
Right. Can you cover
That's as
everything?
simple. You don't have to, you just say
well, you can go back
60,000,
and apply to.
and then there's gonna be only 10 2-bedrooms and 6
I
one.
think that's what we agreed on.
Yeah.
I
So
don't-
just
I don't think
put
we
that-
have
Put it
to-
like that. You don't have to make it
I
harder
think
than
you can
that.
make it so simple,
We can do that.
even though I'm not voting for it.
We can do a flat fee if we want to make it easier. It comes to,
I mean, that's your concern when you go to the zoning board.
Correct.
Right, which makes sense to me. So
if we did just so everyone knows, if we're just going to pick 60, we can pick 60. The math would lead us to about $55,000, but 60,000 is fine. Flat for the development towards the parking fund.
and that's it, maximum of 10 2-bedrooms.
Maximum 10 2-bedrooms. No units more than 2 bedrooms.
The price is one thing, the availability is there.
Yeah, there is.
Yes.
There's the park. They have a huge lot.
There's a
Proportionally
huge
to other.
lot on the right
All right,
side.
as long as the availability
Yeah.
is still in that lot, that's the.
Yeah, they have the 30. They have a 38 space lot available, but the statutory requirements for the commercial are larger than actually that lot is. So.
Right, that's what you mean.
Yeah, yeah, and then there's
Municipal,
the other
plenty of
municipal lot has plenty of space too.
Have it now.
Okay, so we're
good.
If we're tracking the changes to the code to the law as written, or the resolution as written, when we go to the parking section, which is towards the tail end there, page 13 of the agenda, for the benefit of the Peru River Parking District, the sum of $60,000 and period, or comma, get rid of per residential dwelling unit, just a sum of $60,000.
Right.
All right, and then where should the rest of the regulations go in this resolution,
That would
Rob?
be on the next page,
14?
where it says minimum off-street parking. Again, because of the
cuts off, yeah, so we're,
It says 1.5, and then underneath it says 1.0, that 1.0 should be 1.5. 1.5 spaces per dwelling unit is what you're setting it at, you're keeping it at.
did we want to do that, or we were just basing that for the fees? Do we want to actually have a minimum of 1.5 spaces per dwelling unit, or we're just using that for the math for the fees?
No, if you do the 1.5, that's.
Yeah, if we do, I'm saying if we do the 1.5, but I don't think we were 100% on that.
Yeah, why not? It's
1.5.
just for other people who apply.
Yeah, so it maintains that level. All right, so
This is required,
1.5 spaces per dwelling unit, and then we have to add a part saying, would it be added to this section, Rob, saying that they're to have no more than, or no three bedrooms or higher units, and no more than 10 two-bedroom units? That's just a separate paragraph.
Right, I call that a separate condition
That would be under where?
Or, I guess, just before that section,
Other findings and conditions.
yeah.
Under findings and conditions, we'll add a paragraph saying the development shall have no, I'm sorry?
Right above lot bulk control.
Right above line bulk controls, okay, we'll put it in one saying, the development shall have no more, shall have no three-bedroom or greater units, and shall have no more than 10 two-bedroom units.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
And that's a new subheading after the parking improvements before line bulk controls. Shall have no three-bedroom or greater units, and shall have no more than 10 two-bedroom units. All right, is everyone okay, at least, are we all on the same page with changes right now? Everyone's tracking? We're good? Tracking, okay. Any more thought or commentary from the board or considerations that we want to talk about before we go to the secret part, at least? Tom, you good? At least for commentary? Or?
Can I just want to make sure that I
Yes.
understand it.
Yeah, sure.
Are you coming up with a flat fee for what the?
The parking fee will be flat. It'll be flat at $60,000 for your development, just to avoid this whole per unit thing. And then we're changing the minimum required per unit to 1.5 per
Right,
statute.
that was the way it was computed for the place next door. It was based on per residential dwelling.
What was that
unit.
Latin term, Tom? Sui generis.
Sui
I'm
generis?
just going to say that to you.
So I'm gonna- I understand that.
No, I get it. It was it's using the same background math. We're just simplifying. It would have come to 55,780 based on your maximum two-bedroom units. We're just going to say, hey, here's your flat 60, rather than doing all this math.
Brian, we're giving a big variance. 60,000 or 50.
If it's not financially viable with their $60,000 payment, I mean, I would think it would be.
I think he likes 55 better.
I like 55 too if I was you, but I mean, you know.
It worked, you know, the only thing is that when you look at it on a per unit basis, it's $37.50. I mean, you mentioned accounting for inflation previously, but.
Well, we changed it also because we're talking about 1.5 per, it was, first of all, it was per parking space in the previous legislation. It may have worked out to per unit because they may have required only one per unit, but it was per parking space. We changed it to 1.5 for a one-bedroom and two spots for a two-bedroom in our math. And we end up with closer to
Here's the
60.
deal, 2 months worth of rent is gonna cover that, let's be honest. Based on your numbers that you gave at the last board meeting. With about 2,200 for 10 two-bedrooms and 1,800 for 6 one-bedrooms. You've already covered that after you collected 2 rents. I mean, your guy is making a lot of money off that building right now.
Realistically, what's
He's
happening,
getting an opportunity to make a lot more money off that
and to
building.
get ahead of the potential transit-oriented development, millennial housing thing by a full year
I can't
in
believe we're
construction,
arguing over
so.
$60,000 right now.
We're not arguing, I'm just trying
You're
to
just bringing our
understand.
attention to it, I understand. I think we all are clear what we're trying to do with it. Are we good with it? Okay. All right, so we have a motion on the 12, I think it is,
Okay.
for our secret declaration. This is to declare ourselves lead agency with respect to secret regarding the local law. Is there a motion? In favor, Councilman Valentine, second from Councilman Batari. All in favor?
Aye.
No.
No on the secret from Councilman Divney.
Do we need roll calls on each of these, or?
On this next one, we do. Oh, no, we don't need it on this one. We do on the next one. We need a roll call on the next one. Right? We just did secret. We don't need roll call on secret, right, Rob?
No, that's fine. But on, before you go, I guess you're gonna, if you make a motion 13, before you do the final, I'm just gonna ask you to address the override.
So should we vote on the override before we do 13 or after we do
No, I would
13?
start 13 and then vote on the override.
Okay.
Make a motion on 13
All right, so as amended, as presented in the agenda with regards to parking space, parking money, and maximum units and types of units, is there a motion for number 13? Councilman Troy, second from Councilman Valentine. We have to do roll call.
Just on county planning, comment number 1, it's not on there. But
It's in the backup, yeah.
Packet. That would be the one that we need to override and a roll call vote on. Again, they are indicating the size appears to be sufficient, including density, lot size, parking. The override says basis for the override is unique characteristics of the site, location downtown Fall River, proximity to public transportation, make the required modifications to lot bulk controls appropriate. The overlay statute does provide for many lot bulk controls to be determined based on the specific site. As such, flexibility in design and requirements was anticipated when the statute was passed. And with that said, the petitioner must still obtain appropriate variance.
Rob, is this a separate resolution we're voting on to do the override afterwards, or to contain within 13?
Contained within 13.
Okay. Just making sure.
Right now.
On that part,
Correct.
I'll make the motion.
motion to override the recommendations of the county planning board with respect to county comment 1. Is there a second?
I'll make
Councilman Valentine, all in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry, roll call vote. On a roll call, the clerk.
Councilman Troy.
Yes, to override.
Councilman Tierney.
No.
Councilman Vittori.
Yes.
Councilman Valentine.
Yes.
And Supervisor Day.
Yes. All right, now back to the previous attempted motion of 13 for the actual change as amended. Was moved by Councilman Troy, I believe, and seconded by Councilman Valentine already, which I kind of messed up on the order there, my fault.
There's no other overrides needed?
It's just that
Rob?
one, right, Rob?
That was the only one.
Okay,
The other ones will go to zoning board.
yeah.
Right, they referenced it.
Okay, so we have the motion already, so on a roll call for the actual change to the law.
Okay, Councilman Troy.
I vote yes.
Councilman Tierney.
No, I vote no because we keep talking about doing a new comprehensive plan for Pearl River. But by allowing this tonight, you're setting precedent for every person who owns a one-story dwelling in the Pearl River downtown area to come into this board and say, we want to have a pack zone with 3-story housing. So you're setting the precedent for all of Pearl River. You don't need parking, or you can pay for it. You don't need floor you don't have to meet the floor area ratios. You don't need anything. And I think it's a bad decision, and we're going to pay for it. You might have parking today, but you have 4 more of these developments come down here. You may not have that parking. Everyone talked about millennial housing. You know, why would you go millennial housing if you can take the easy route and just go with PAC zoning? So I vote no.
Joe,
Joe?
next.
Okay, so, we didn't, sorry about that. Councilman Valentine?
I'm going to vote yes, because I think this is a unique piece of property with the parking spaces. And you can only put as many packed apartments in, or senior apartments in, as the market will bear. I think the next thing that Pearl River needs is millennial housing. And there will have to be, they'll have to put parking underneath the buildings or however they're constructed, but totally different setup. So I vote yes, because I think this is needed in downtown Pearl River. I think they gave in a little bit on the parking, and I support it.
And then Councilman Vittori?
Yes.
And then Supervisor Day?
I'm going to vote yes, and just to the rationale. First, there has been, this has been done before for the movie theater in a similar fashion. Also, in terms of precedent, there is no legal precedent. It is just, we've done it before and we can refer to it. I think sui generis was the term, right, Tom?
But we didn't give them the ability to build up. It was already up.
Fair enough. That was a conversion. I'll acknowledge that. That said, I do think the important distinction here with going forward is we've now launched our millennial housing / downtown revitalization and transit-oriented development study. This applicant came in before that was even being contemplated. I think now we are in a position as a board to say, hey, until we figure out the zoning for that, we're going to press hold on anything like this and get a proper zone overlaid. I don't think it's fair to penalize the applicant for their speed of getting in ahead of our efforts, but I think that we all kind of have a sense of where we're going with that, and it's going to fit generally with that zone anyway. So given that, I vote yes. And
This was originally submitted as millennial housing.
yes, a while ago, as soon as it was changed, but the point is my point is they got in before we adopted the downtown revitalization study that's actually going to lead to the zoning change. So I believe there's a hard line we can draw as a board in principle, and obviously legally is a whole other question, but yeah.
Mr. Divany earlier talked about apples and apples, oranges and oranges. And the other thing here is in terms of this particular development, we take these one at a time. We did the movie theater, I don't know, 10 years ago. You know, it's not that we do zone changes, you know, willy-nilly or do them every week or whatever. We don't. We take it on a case-by-case basis. I happen to agree with Ms. Divany in terms of millennial housing. We do need to look at millennial housing in the downtown hamlets. But this here, I believe there's a need for it, and I support it.
All right, thank you, congratulations. And
Congratulations.
we'll go on to your next board.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks very much.
All right, so we have a couple voting resolutions, there's based on timing that we need to do, and then we'll move to the workshopping. Eric, if you could just give me a nod, do we need to vote on the chiller tonight, or could that vote? Because I'll just add it to the
Only
front
if
end of
you
the
want air
agenda.
conditioning.
I do want it, I just don't know if you need us to. I don't like to vote unnecessarily in a
Didn't we
workshop.
vote on, didn't we pay for
We
it?
voted on the bond, we didn't vote on the actual purchase.
I had a brief conversation beforehand about how you wanted to structure that resolution, so. No, the resolution's okay. Okay.
Do you need the vote tonight, is all I'm asking?
I would like it, just so we can.
Then that's all I need to hear, because I'm sweating too, so. All right, so we have, I think now with that one, 4 voting resolutions, and then we'll be moving to our regular workshopping of things based on timing. Again, usually we don't vote on these things. So the first resolution is to approve lend assistance to deny Park Conservancy for the showmobile. Half of these have happened already, and we're just voting, what's the term? Nunc pro tunc, Rob? It's like a Latin class up here. Is there a motion on number 14? Councilman Valentine with the motion, Batari with a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, and then we have accept resignation of Brian Terry from Akabor and PDAC, Parks Development Committee. Is there a motion? Councilman Troy, second from Councilman Batari. All in favor?
Aye.
And then a motion to set the public hearing regarding, and I'm going to ask Rob to jump in on this and explain it because it's not appeared before, to set a public hearing regarding amending town code for vehicles and traffic by adding a new section, towing of vehicles on posted parade, street, or special event routes. Rob, if you could please give us some background because it's the first it's been seen in public.
Captain Brown contacted our office, specifically with respect to the proposed Slide the City event that's coming. In order to prep for that, they're going to have to clear out or keep some streets clear with no parking. There really was no provision in the town code that allowed the police department to tow, to simply post
Towaway zones.
the towaway zones, for situations like this. The proposed law, the public hearing will be next week. The proposed law simply says if there's a parade, street fair, or special event, provided the police department provides enough notice, sufficient notice to obviously people who want to park, that they can tow if the people park in violation of a posted zone in such circumstances. So it's you'll see the law.
In the how would we? I'm sure someone's parked illegally before the St. Patrick's Day parade. Is it?
Well, it's different.
They get towed.
They get towed, and the problem is it's not in the code, I guess. Right?
Yeah, they get towed.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So we just need to change the law to back up that up.
It would have to be there for a certain period of time. However, calls were made, and at times cars were put towed.
Okay, so let's make sure our officers are able to have a law to enforce them.
There's a situation where they want the street clear, I guess, at like 2 in the morning.
Right, we just want to
Kind of a random.
formally be able to have the authority to do it.
Posted 24 hours in
Okay.
advance.
So this is to set the public hearing date for the 24th at 8:15 PM. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
By Councilman Valentine, second by Councilman, someone raise your hand. Councilman Divney, all in favor?
Aye.
Great, and then we're going to just, so we're not voting out of order, we're going to move item number 46 now, so we have to vote on it. That's to replace our air conditioning. Councilman Valentine Rose, we already voted to approve the bond for this. Unfortunately, the air conditioner decided to kick out on us before the summer was over, so we had to rush this through, and Eric did a great job finding a contract basis to get this awarded. Between this and the other ones that he has, we're actually below the budget when you add in his other improvements, like the floor in the Greenbush Road, or Greenbush Hall. So I'll move it because I have to be in the office all day. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second, Councilman Valentine, all in favor?
The only
Okay.
I'm sorry, the only thing I wanted to add is subject to a formal written agreement with the town itself.
Subject to formal written agreement with the town itself,
As approved by the town attorney.
as approved by the town attorneys. Obviously, got that, Joe? Is everyone who just voted okay with that adjustment
Yes.
at the last minute?
Sorry,
All right.
We're piggybacking onto an existing contract, but we have to.
We still have to write an agreement. Yeah, okay. Great. Going back now to the normal course of events, which is item 17. We're now workshopping, we're not voting. This is a proposed resolution for the continuation. This is basically the proposed resolution. We're going to continue our public hearing on the performance standards, then the proposed resolution for closing it, which theoretically we will at that point. Then proposed resolution for secra on that. Then 20 is proposed resolution for the actual no significant impacts, the neg deck. And then 21 is the actual resolution to adopt the local law as most recently circulated, which we have time and has been done properly. So 22, yeah, and I'm sorry, and it just refers to your attachments for the actual proposed law. We're putting them in, to keep the agenda a little thinner, we're putting them as attachments now. It also lets us show crossouts and stuff. Then 22, proposed resolution to open the hearing on the PAC district for the point. 23 is to continue or close that hearing. 24 is the secret declaration. 25 is the actual resolution for the PAC zone for the change. Then we have the proposed resolution to set a public hearing for the applicants who came in earlier for the Palisades Conference Center. That would be in September, theoretically, but we're not voting today. Any questions thus far? I don't want to keep rolling ahead if
No,
any good
I'm
questions.
good.
All right, stop me if I'm going too fast. Proposed resolution to accept the petition and request for zone change and declare lead agency, or declaration of intent to declare lead agency will be put in there the same day. Then we're working on this SRO agreements with the school districts. That's going to be hopefully in for the 24th. The exact content we've been through in terms of what's going on, and we'll talk more later about it. Proposed resolution to use the land by our current, I think everyone's aware of this, but the land by our current Parks Recreation Maintenance Facility, Porter Fire Department came in and asked us to use, to be able to use some of it without interfering with the highway, and the highway sat down with them, and so they're okay with it for doing extra extraction from vehicles, training. So that we ran that through departments, and that they're asking for just the ability to do that because they don't have the ability at their current site anymore. Then we have authorized legal counsel related to the cell tower space, the cell tower space Teresa's brought in, or is referenced. You don't need to vote on this right now, right?
No, I think we
Okay. So Teresa's brought in a firm that specializes in this because it's a little above, or too specific for the knowledge base we have here. Moving on to the town board IT, we have the change to the lease at 1547 Critical Systems because there's just a change of how much it costs. Is Anthony here? No. What is the reasoning behind this? I just saw it pop up.
So we have server space at 1547, so I have data there and backups and stuff like that. We have a connection from here to there that's just kind of a private connection. I want to add an internet connection there, so we have another way in. I'm going to put email in both places, here and there.
Sort of backup.
And we'll just have different ways to get in. So in case something happens to the building here, we have a disaster recovery option. At least we can keep email up, things like that.
Okay. Thank you. Then we have a change in title for an employee in the clerk's office with no change in salary. And then we have an authorization of a sewer backup settlement related to addressing blowout. Was this accepted by the person who we offered it to? It's just in theory if they do accept it? Teresa, Rob? The settlement for the sewer, was that accepted by the person who filed, or are we just assuming they might accept it?
had our claims
just have to put this vote in.
For it anyway, I mean, they rejected.
Okay, either way, we have to vote is what you're saying, to put it out there. Okay, I didn't know if it was them first or us first. All right, then DME sewer registrations, then if we want to discuss this, some of it's definitely for executive session, some of it might be now, but the building inspector at less than full-time, is that something we want to do in executive session, given its personnel? Or do we want to try to address some of the issues? It's a fine line to walk, I think. Yeah, okay.
I'm fine either way.
So I think let's try to talk about some of it that we'll make sure it's not specific. But basically, and Jane, if you just want to be ready to step up, because we're going to have questions. Previously, earlier in the year, there was a vote to create a assistant building inspector, which terminology basically is, or deputy building inspector, the deputy department director for the building department. He was a building inspector. He went to that. There was no intent at the time to backfill the position until possibly the budget. We then went through and there was some backlog of building permits and it's taking longer. So the concept was that we would, because it's revenue generating and because it's because of the backlog basically, to fill that slot that he vacated at a less than full-time, which was full-time. I personally normally would want to do it in a budget process, which is what I've said in the past with other things. However, we had talked about the concept of doing it and specific reason for it. So maybe if anyone has questions for Jane right now, since we are workshopping it.
Correct, the position existed, and as did the deputy. So
The deputy was budgeted for in the budget previously?
it was in the previous years, correct, it was never eliminated. The plans, yeah,
But it wasn't
Position.
budgeted.
But
the
was it-
positions existed, so.
Existed, but their salary was not. The deputy's position was budgeted for or wasn't budgeted for? Wasn't, right?
No,
Hey.
it's
No, it wasn't filled, I know that.
The raise was not, correct.
Raise was not.
But the responsibilities increased, which I explained when I made the presentation regarding.
We're just getting the background.
So,
Talk about whether in the budget
yeah,
or
so
not.
what happened is the inspector moved into a deputy position. There has not been a deputy in years, which caused a lot of problems within the department. Supervisor and I spoke about that when he started and felt that there needed to be a second person in charge. In my absence, no one could provide my duties. So if somebody came in and they needed an interpretation, and they needed permit signed off, the only way it was happening is having one of the inspectors acting as the director and therefore being paid out of title. And it was bouncing between two inspectors, which is obviously very confusing and caused a lot of errors in both the review and the issuance of permits. So I came to the board and presented what the deputy inspector would be charged with doing, and one of them is doing all of the zoning reviews. Prior, each inspector did the zoning reviews independently. She had 4 different opinions of the zoning code, and it was not being enforced properly. We have now streamlined that process. It goes to the deputy. He reviews and sends it to the appropriate boards. In that same time of instituting a major change in the department and the flow of the permit applications coming in, we got slammed with permits. We had a record month, which I presented, and we just couldn't keep up. I actually have the numbers. As of the end of June, and again, our department is self-supporting in that we generate our own revenue based on the applications that come in, and I've demonstrated that in my proposed 2019 budget and the average over the past years. But as of right now, at the end of June, we're 1.8 million total building permit fees above last year.
And excluding the one-time shot, it's still what, over?
Well, we're 689,000 over this time last year. Take out, we had one large check for 1.2 million for the largest project in the town right now, which is really requiring almost a full-time inspector on it. It's a humongous project of nothing the size of that this town's seen in a very long time. So that drains the one inspector to the one side. But not only that, in 6 months, we've basically we've generated more revenue than we did all of last year. In fact, it's 1.7 million total over all of last year. We are far exceeding Clarkstown. We're blowing them out of the water. They are twice the size of us, and we're doing 75% volume of what they are doing, but our revenues are higher. So people are complaining, and understandably, that smaller permits are getting caught up in the log. So we've been trying to separate them out. So the idea with having a new, less than full-time inspector is to have that inspector in the office, and those smaller applications are coming in, he's right there. He can review them. If they're deficient, which a good percentage of them are, even from design professionals, he immediately can respond to them and say, well, you're missing X, Y, Z. Please come back with that information. Instead of it getting stuck in a pile and no one's getting a response for maybe 4, 5, 6 days, to the fact that their application's incomplete. That kind of responsibility cannot be put on the clerk. They're not meant to read plans. They just process the paperwork. They're not trained to read the plans and deal with the zoning codes. So having that inspector in place, that's what they will do, and they will take what we're calling easy pass, which is the easy stuff, the window replacements, roof replacements, solar installations, especially in residential applications, which we have a lot of those. Small stuff, like if you're replacing your front steps, a small deck, and a pool. Those will then go into what would be considered an easy pass, because they don't necessarily need zoning evaluations. And that less than full-time inspector will take those, process them, and issue them. So we're breaking down the level of each type of review and assigning it to the appropriate inspectors then. Zoning will still stay with the deputy, because that's the most important. If there's an error in the zoning review and a permit is issued, then we have obviously a legal problem. The smaller stuff can be done by an inspector who doesn't have that much zoning experience.
From a technical standpoint, budgeting-wise, I don't have it in front of me, so I'm just if you remember, your deputy position that we filled, was that budgeted for at the old salary, or was it not budgeted at all? I know it was an authorized position.
It may not have
but
been
was it
budgeted.
We don't, okay.
Yeah, I don't, when I started, the budget was already adopted. I
Right,
didn't have
yeah,
any,
I know, yeah.
so I don't recall the exact numbers.
Well, what she's saying, though, is we were backfilling and paying them out of title pay, so.
Right.
Whether
It was
budgeted
being paid
or not,
for.
they were
Right.
getting paid.
Yeah.
Someone was getting.
And then we did change the salary associated with the position, I know that. Basically, it boils down to, do we want to go and fill the slot that was vacated, that's an authorized slot, but was vacated with the belief it would not be backfilled at the time, in order to, with a less than full-time instead of a full-time, in order to deal with this sort of heavy flow of permits now in advance of the budget process, or do we want to wait until the fall in the budget process? We don't have to make a decision now, we just have to know whether we want to do it generally in concept, but, because we're not voting today, but that's what it boils down to.
Well, I got to be honest, because I'm in construction and I go to building departments every day, it takes, I wish it was only 5 days to get a simple permit looked at. It's a lot longer than 5 days. And construction is booming. And I don't really think it's the building department's fault. There's just so many more. I'm booming. Every guy I talk to, the supply house is booming. So that means that everybody that's in that supply house is putting in a building permit somewhere. When you're busy, you have to hire the personnel to deal with being busy. If we do it less than full-time, if we slow down, we can also get rid of the less than full-time person. So we're not tying our hands, but we're bound to have this, but there's a definite need because it's taking an incredible long time. And I don't blame the personnel. I think they're busting the horns. It's just that the amount of applications has increased tremendously.
If we hire this person, how is that going to affect municipal searches? Because those are taking 30 days plus right now.
Well, Chris and I have been talking about that over the past few months. To do just the title searches and do the inspections that I know the tax assessor has brought up a number of times, that is at least a part-time position. It's a minimum of 20 hours a week, based on the title searches we've been having come in. Now,
That's if you want someone to go to each house. Like
If you want to actually visit it.
well, that's an average of 2 hours per title search. Some are going to take longer, some will take less. Now, one of the things that needs to be addressed, which I have brought up, is there's a whole legal issue attached to that. You have now trained building inspectors that are being asked to go out onto a location. There needs to be an outline determined as to what their limited scope is at that point. If they're walking around for a half hour to see, did someone put a shed up or not put a shed up, if they miss it, an unsafe condition on a deck. Where is the town's liability on that? That's not a title search. Whether or not something is necessarily not constructed properly when an inspector walks on a site may leave us to liability.
What's done right now, though, because you're saying it's taking a long time now, and we don't
It-
go outside right now. So
Well,
is it-
it's a high volume, right?
But is it a desk thing right now?
It's a desk thing. One clerk is assigned to that.
And that takes how long per, and how many? I mean,
It's a,
that's a clerk, it's not a building inspector.
That's just doing a file search.
It's a clerk issue.
do you want me to answer?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry.
So the title search comes in. Right now, it is a review of our records. That's
Right.
it. And
It's
it
just the
clearly
records.
states that. It does not state that anybody went out and did an inspection. It's our records. So if something was built illegally, we may not know about it because it's not in our records. Now, there has been situations where the tax assessor has gone out, seen an illegal situation that they don't have on record, or they have seen an MLS listing that shows a photograph of something that they don't have on record. And then it's brought to our attention. And then a code enforcement officer will go out to see if there was something constructed illegally. Sometimes we can't gain access to the house. So if the tax assessor sees that the MLS listing is showing a finished basement or a garage conversion, honestly, the people do not have to allow the code enforcement officer access. So that's the situation we're in right now. And again, there are many legal situations that can be attached to this, and I think it needs to be reviewed. Now, in reference to Tom's question, yes, ultimately, it would be great to have someone that comes in and that's trained, and we can transition to that. And maybe at that point, this person does become a full-time person, and what they're doing is the easy pass reviews, as well as partly doing the title searches along with the clerk. So the inspector would be told, okay, here's 5 title searches for this week. He goes out and does his inspections, comes back with his report. If there's violations, he issues them. If there's no violations, he lets the clerk know that they're clear to move forward. The clerk then issues the clear title.
But right now, it wouldn't, to Tom's question, right now, the job this person's doing wouldn't be what the clerk's doing for these searches. So it wouldn't have an impact on that right now. It's
Correct.
currently structured. It would have an
Correct.
impact on the permits
So
themselves.
I guess your question
Stuff like
is,
that.
what can we do to speed up the title searches regardless?
In current form, I guess it would require,
No. If you did it the way.
that would be, the on-site would take 2 hours. What does it take current form
It
clerk
all
to do?
depends.
Ish.
If there's no ish, because some of them are coming in and we have, if you do a title search on Verizon, it's 40 permits in there. Like,
What
we
about,
just
like,
went
the-
through that. I mean, a
Yeah,
single
yeah.
house, it depends if there's violations in the folder. So it all depends on how many we come in. I don't have the numbers on the amount of title
Does
searches,
it
but
go
we
to
got slammed with them too.
If they-
Construction goes up, house sales go up.
If they
it's hand in
find
hand.
a violation, the clerk finds one, they find a violation and search, does it then get handed over to a code enforcer or building inspector at that point? Or does it just go back to the title people?
Goes back to the title.
It doesn't get
It
enforced?
depends on what it is and how it was recognized.
Permit that's never closed out.
Yeah, then that goes to building inspector at that point.
After 2 years.
So theoretically, there are certain circumstances that would speed it up because it's certain, and if there's an issue, it would go to a building inspector after the clerk to address
Correct.
those issues. So in those circumstances, it would have an
I
impact,
mean,
but
again,
not on the
and I
standard
don't know if
process.
this is the forum for this, but there's many things that affect that.
Yeah, yeah.
Not all of our records are even in our department.
Right.
They're up on the Nike base. So I have to obtain something, I can't get it till Thursday. We have to make an appointment to get up there. I mean, I could stand here for 3 hours and go through those issues of what's clogging us up when we're trying to get stuff. I mean, we just went through it with Verizon. Look at the amount of open permits they had, some of them were 12 and 15 years old. Oh, we're selling our building. Okay. They had all these permits that were open. So now we're all scrambling to try to assist them and get it done, but it's extremely time-consuming. So there's a lot that goes into it, and a lot of it that leaves the town in a lot of liability, and I'm sure Tom can understand that. We need to put a specific
So if we,
guide on that as to what the town is willing to be responsible for when they do that.
no, I think.
She's talking about a visual inspection.
Yeah, but that's
I think
another
we should
step. That's a
find out.
next step
I mean,
at some point.
Clarkstown has it. I think we should start with, Rob can talk to them
Yeah.
and see what they have on.
I have from our department heads meeting,
Because
Rob and
Clarkstown, West
Jane. and-
Haverstraw has it.
Yeah.
Because you have to, West Haverstraw, you have to sign an affidavit that there's a working smoke detector,
And then once you do that, they'll come in and do the on-site inspection.
They're actively researching this right now based on the
Correct.
departments
We've been
usually we're
working on
talking. So Brian and Rob and Jane are researching it to get that change
So
done,
if
but
we
that
get-
doesn't affect this
But
yet.
if we
Yeah,
get back to this.
yeah.
But this is not gonna have any effect on the municipal searches if we hire this position.
Not at this point.
Not at this point, yeah. It would have an effect on building permits primarily.
It may, if I find that there's time allotted within the 28 hours, which is the maximum that this inspector is permitted to work at this point, I may be able to put some of that. But again, I think that needs to be addressed and
It's a separate
outlined
law,
to protect the town,
Well, that's a
Tom. It's
separate thing,
very critical. Yeah, I don't want to just start sending inspectors out.
No, no.
File search.
You're just talking about currently file search as is. They're not really
He
involved.
only has 20 hours, can we keep the extra 8 hours and do some file?
Tom's not going to like my answer. Give me another clerk. No, seriously, we have 2 clerks that process all of these,
Right, we're not.
all of this paperwork,
Jane,
so.
I appreciate, we are very familiar with all of the issues that we have to address, but we got to address the question as to whether we're going to address this one now.
Correct.
So the question is just the part-time building inspector, or less than full-time. There's no benefits associated
No,
with the
less than
position.
full-time does receive benefits.
Less than full-time does receive benefits. I'm sorry, it's less than full-time. Part-time doesn't receive benefits, less than full-time does.
Right. And part-time can only work a maximum of 17 hours a week versus 28.
Are we allowed to hire multiple part-times instead of one less than full-time under union rules, or?
I don't know.
So just clarity, the less than full-time will get benefits?
Yes.
Correct. But can only work a maximum of 28 hours a week.
And if you give it the benefits, you might as well put it at full-time.
Well, no, because then you incur an obligation to keep the position. It's not treated as a union position for less than full-time, where you can, it's being workshopped. We're discussing some thoughts on it. We're not voting today. We are not, definitely not voting today. We're just making sure everyone's got some concerns thought about and discussed. Is there anything you guys on this side of the room would like to say? It's been a quiet.
Yeah, well,
quiet side.
listen, I just went through a permit process on something, and you go in and there's a line, there's people there. I mean, I can certainly support whether it's part-time, less than full-time. The numbers are up. They're, I mean, this is something that's, has to keep going,
So, Dennis, you have anything, thoughts you want to add? No. Okay, so we'll move forward. We'll have Teresa look at it a little bit. We'll consider the options of multiple part-times instead of just one less than full-time.
Well, the only
We'll
thing to
talk it through.
consider there is training.
Right, whether
So
we
we
have the
did-
availability of personnel for that is another question, right?
Well, the training,
Yeah.
the space.
Yeah.
I have to give this person a computer station, which I don't know, I might be throwing out some files to give them a location. As well as we did hire off a list. Donna canvassed the active list.
Right.
And there was 4 Orangetown residents. 3 of them responded, and we did interview 3.
Okay.
And now the list is posted as if any town employees are interested, that they can express their interest. Don, I think that has to be up till the 21st.
Okay, so we'll double check that. I think we're all in a position where we're at least comfortable moving forward out of the workshop and then making a decision at that point. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Proposed resolution for Colonial Day lend assistance on 36. Proposed resolution to approve lend assistance for Sly the City, which we're filling out the details this week. It's related to that. Proposed resolution to lend assistance for the Gaelic Athletic Association bagpipe and drums competition. They need dumpster and stuff and auxiliary parking. Nye Chamber of Commerce lend assistance via the Showmobile. Pearl River Day is coming in early for their Showmobile request on October 6th. That's nice. September 22nd, Dominican College lend assistance with the Showmobile for their Fire in the Sky event. Lend assistance for the Village of Nyack, September 15th via Porta Johns for their Nyack get-together, great Nyack get-together. Then 43, lend assistance for the Piermont Fire Department for the Showmobile for their volunteer firefighter parade Saturday, September 8th. And accept a donation of a memorial bench along the rail trail in honor of Kathleen and Kevin Whalen. And then moving on, 45, extend agreement for mechanical controls, HVAC services, mechanical services with Johnson Controls for Town Hall. Then we already voted on the side chiller at 46. 47, approve Michael Donahue to attend the annual Relief, that's kind of a funny spelling, Relief Conference in Rochester. I think they were trying to make a pun out of that or something. That's weird. 48, resolution to approve the Pearl River Day Festival, Central Avenue from John, I think we did this, oh, no, this is different assistance, this is Highways Department assistance for that, with barriers and detour signs and stuff. Then the car show on September 15th and 16th on Central Avenue, also similar stuff. Then dumpsters for the Pearl River School District for use of green waste material for disposal of that. Then we have a long resolution for personnel accepting the retirement in resignation, in accepting retirement incentive that we passed a while ago for all of our folks who are taking it. I think everyone's on here. We'll double check the list before we vote. And that's all we have for the workshop. Does anyone have anything that they would like to bring up for workshop for new business? Jerry, Dennis, Tom, Paul, you guys have any new business items?
No.
Okay, so do we need executive session on nothing?
One litigation matter, Dowling, and going to court on it next week, and they need to discuss it.
Okay, so we have a brief executive session. We have, does anyone have a personal connection to the folks who are adjourning in honor of here, to Elizabeth's home? Dennis?
Yeah, I do. It's a sister of the Tiffany's. Michael Tiffany was very active in the South Orangetown Little League. As a matter of fact, he was one of the people that was one of the people responsible when we ended up doing the South Orangetown Little League fields. They're important members of the community. Also, his wife Patrice teaches at the finest institution in the country.
Which one is that?
Manhattan College.
Oh, I'd never heard that from you before, Dennis. Okay, so Dennis, would you like to move us into executive session for legal matters and then adjourn in honor of Elizabeth Solomon?
Yeah, I'd like to make that motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Yep.
Councilman Vitari, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you very much.